I'm Charlie Stross. I write science fiction novels. I'm published by Ace and Tor in the United States and by Orbit in the UK.
So what brings you to BosKone today?
I like to come to BosKone. It's a good way of getting away from where I live, having a break overseas. My editors and my literary agent are all based in New York, so they usually come here as well. So it's also somewhere I can go and do some business on the side and meet fans, do stuff.
Yeah, it's been a whole lot of fun here. So what would you say is your primary, message or concern when you're writing science fiction about society? Do you have any kind of real specific goals?
Yeah, but they vary from book to book. I've been doing it for a living for a decade now. I was doing it for about 15 years before that. Written fiction is to some extent the study of the human condition. I would distinguish science fiction as being the study of the human condition under circumstances that do not occur naturally somewhere on Earth now or in history. Given that we're living through a period of pretty much unprecedented historical change, the rate of change of technology and of society in general has gone through the roof in the past 50 to 100 years, what I like to do is to look at the way our human concerns, the way our lives are changing, sometimes reflected off the future, sometimes reflected off a distorted version of the present. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just basically another branch of literary fiction with a slightly broader field of focus, using a wide-angle lens rather than a narrow focus one.
So, do you believe in this idea of the singularity?
Only on even-numbered days. I don't believe in it. I think it's an interesting speculation that has some plausible justification to it. It's not one that can be ruled out easily, but it's one that I would be very cautious about embracing without skepticism. It's useful to speculate about it. It's a useful tool for examining our preconceptions about, for example, the roles of computers or the roles of human intelligence in the broader universe. But I try not to do outright belief.
So it seemed like yesterday I saw your virtual reality panel, and it seemed like you had this perspective that technology might not be able to adequately, represent reality or something like that, and that maybe that's the struggle that we have with technology, is that it just can't properly, create a new reality.
Actually, it can. We can do pretty well at representing reality. The problem I was pointing out there is the sheer difficulty of convincing you, going beyond just visuals on a pretty screen and, for example, an avatar, but actually to convince you that you are somewhere where you aren't. That, for example, instead of sitting in a chair here, you're actually climbing a rock face. That's difficult. And, I can rig together all the equipment necessary to convince you of this, to fool your inner ear, to fool your eyeballs, to fool your nose. It's not going to fool anyone, though, if you happen to die of a heart attack in the middle of it. At some fundamental level, we've got to deal with the real world itself.
So, I was reading your blog a little bit last night after I went home, and your first blog post that I saw was, "I'm not a futurist."
That's not written by me.
Oh.
I handed my blog over to Elizabeth Bear for the week. I need to tweak the blog layout slightly to make it more obvious who's the author of the posting on it, seeing I'm going to be having guest authors now.
Okay. Well, I guess that's a interesting dilemma of virtual identity there.
Yeah.
Multiple people creating your
You weren't the only
online
person who
persona.
got confused by it. In the comment thread, quite a few people got mixed up.
What is your newest book coming out?
The next one coming out is, I'm afraid, book number 6 of a series, and probably not really much of a hard SF novel, not really a hard extrapolation. It's to some extent an adventure yarn, and it's the concluding volume of it. It's called The Trade of Queens, and it's out in mid-March this year.
Okay, well, and what is the title of the series?
The Merchant Princes. It's set in a multiverse, a series of branching parallel worlds, and there's a family who've discovered the knack of travelling between parallel worlds. They use this to sort of trade items of value between one world and another. The twist in the tale is they're actually from a relatively primitive backward world. They've figured out a way of travelling over to ours, and they've managed to leverage their ability so that in our world, they're drug smugglers. They can take drugs over to their world and just move them around without the police or border agents being able to intercept them. And in their world, they're the Medicis, because their world is basically high medieval.
So, does that at all draw from your background as a pharmacist?
No. It does, however, draw from an interest I've had for some years in macroeconomics and the issues surrounding development. I use it to some extent as a speculative laboratory for looking into why some cultures, with access to Western technologies, tools, and education, manage to develop and others don't. A classic example would be if you look at South Korea. In 1953, at the end of the Korean War, South Korea was largely starving, homeless, had been under Japanese military occupation for 30 years, and then there'd been a vicious war fought over the peninsula. They were pretty much on a level with North Korea. South Korea today is as rich as Japan per capita. They're absolutely a first world country. North Korea isn't. What causes some cultures to develop and others to fail repeatedly? And that's sort of what I was using this series, this superficially fairly light, fluffy adventure series, as a lab for examining.
We went to a forum earlier today about building legal systems in these, fantasy realms, and would you say that kind of is a subject of inquiry for your series as well?
Different series in that case. I live in Scotland, a country which has a different legal system from England, which in turn is somewhat different from the way the common law legal system has evolved in the United States. So I've sort of got an interesting perspective on it, because I live in a country where if you're up in front of a jury, it can on criminal charges, it can return 3 verdicts. You've got case proven, you've been found guilty, case not proven, they have failed to find you guilty, and not proven, which means you are free to leave the court, but the jury think you did it. There's just not enough evidence to convict you. It's a pretty onerous judgment. If somebody says he's a murderer after you've walked with a not proven verdict, you can't sue them for libel and succeed. Again, if more evidence surfaces, you can be tried again. But it gives an interesting perspective on legal systems when you think about things such as juries that can return multiple different verdicts.
Absolutely. I think that oftentimes we get very caught up in our system, especially in Americans. We just think this is how legal systems are.
No, America is actually quite exceptional and weird in the way its legal system works compared to a lot of places in the rest of the world. I find visiting America kind of interesting. It's like visiting another planet, because the way Americans think about the rest of the world is it's another planet.
If you have any prediction that you can give us for what you think, is going to happen for society.
Okay, what I would like to caution everybody to remember is science fiction, especially written science fiction, isn't a predictive medium. We do the 1,000 monkeys thing, put 1,000 monkeys in front of 1,000 typewriters for 1,000 words, you might get the collected works of Shakespeare if you're lucky. Sometimes we actually hit the ball out of the park. But for the most part, we're not in the prediction business. What we're actually in is the commentary business of taking today's concerns and reflecting them on the silver screen of the future to sort of examine them from a very different angle. The beauty of science fiction is you can take concerns about, say, terrorism or pollution or overpopulation or whatever, stick them in an entirely different setting so that you can ignore all the peripheral political stuff and news coverage and examine the issue in isolation in your own laboratory, I guess. While also providing entertainment for readers. Having said that, sometimes we do predictive stuff, sometimes we actually work, but it's a very fraught business. Most science fiction writers are not professional futurologists. We're not paid to do scenario development. If you want to talk to somebody who is, you need to talk to Carl Schrader, who's around the back of the con.
Well, that would be fascinating. Well, thank you very much for your time.